Hello, poetry lovers! Tonight's video shows the creation of a new poem entitled Things to Avoid Thinking. Stick around to the end of the video to see the complete first draft of this poem. The poem tonight had its inspiration in recent events. In the past few months, as we've started 2023, I've been increasingly aware of local and national news that details the dangers of being alive in America today. This growing awareness started a couple years ago and was honestly a driver in the conceptualization of this channel. I'm so grieved by the evidence of, as Robert Burns put it, man's inhumanity to man. But I feel, as I suspect many of us do, so powerless against it. I have no important connections, no famous platform, no excess of wealth that I can use to advocate for any change. I have also no delusions about my ability to impact the political process. But I realized a few years ago, I do have one thing: my voice. I can write about what I see and the grief I feel in response. I can verbalize humankind's humanity, the essential dignity of human life as those who are created in the image of God. And I can give voice to those who, like me, feel powerless to affect change. So that's where this poem started. In May of 2023, if you've been watching American news, you know that we've seen many recent stories of violence in our country. I've been processing through these events and considering how I can respond. And last week, those considerations merged interestingly with reflections on my own private life, how I ignore or acknowledge the problems I'm facing. So that's where I started, with my own small, insignificant problems and my unwillingness to deal with even those things. It took me a few minutes to get started as I struggled to find compelling ways to discuss these boring problems. But as I neared the middle of the poem, I started transitioning to mentioning the larger national issues that I've been processing. I wanted to move from the mundane to the heartbreaking as smoothly as possible, and to mention them both in the same tone until I reached the poem's climax. As I worked toward the poem's crucial moments, I focused on highlighting versions of the phrase "don't think" as much as possible, using enjambment to break up sentences with line breaks and place the phrase at the beginning or end of a line, which is a more prominent position and draws focus. Between the repetition and the lineation, or line structure, choices, my goal was to keep reiterating the negative instruction to an almost overwhelming point. These lineation choices added a fractured or incomplete impression to the poem. Then, as I neared the poem's end, I used multiple dashes in my final example to increase the sense of disconnection and brokenness. I wanted the physical structure of the poem on the page to mimic the poem's emotional direction. As I neared the final line, I struggled again to find words. I knew the poem needed to shift, that it would be disingenuous to settle for fear or despair at the end. And I also had the vague sense that the answer to how to turn the theme around lay earlier in the poem. And I often feel this way as I write. The poem takes shape and unpacks itself in unexpected ways as I'm writing it. And I often find that something I did very casually at the poem's beginning turns out to be of crucial importance for the poem's development later on. This time was no different. And I realized a phrase I had written almost unconsciously earlier on was the key to how to turn the whole thing around, to provide an ending line that shifted the poem's tone and implied a new direction. So here's the first draft. I think this piece needs a little revision, but I also felt compelled to share it right away. Here's the first draft of Things to Avoid Thinking, written in about 16 minutes on May 2nd, 2023. Things to avoid thinking. Don't think about the refrigerator. None of its leftovers are edible at this point, and frankly, some were barely appealing at the start. Don't think either of the unpaid bills at the bookshelf's back. Honestly, money probably exists to pay them, if only desire did too. Avoid articulating the list of must-dos that's itching the brain's insides, since it's nearing midnight and no action can be taken. Don't think of the news. Scroll TikTok, but only thoughtless. Watch Babish broil or brine, but don't notice the notification of government's breakdown. Don't wonder where it's safe to get lost anymore, where doors can be knocked in confidence. At the park, don't think where you'd run, how you'd cover children with your body when someone opens fire. Don't imagine metallic confetti in the grass is broken glass from a school door. Don't. Just don't. Think of the child, only 9, gunned down, of whom his governor said simply, illegal. It's after midnight. Don't wonder how any of us sleep anymore. Try to sleep. Last, avoid thinking. No action can be taken. Thanks for watching this episode of Ars Poeticat. If you enjoyed watching poetry happen, please like and subscribe. Then go make some art.